Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to order the 70th annual meeting of the Vermont 251 Club. It's yeah, I feel like that deserves a round of applause. Yes, it's been 71 years since this club was founded. For the native-born and those born elsewhere but with Vermont in them, to veer from the beaten path, to discover the secret and lovely places the main roads do not reveal. I always love that quote from our founder, Dr. Peach. And I'm so very grateful to all of you coming out for this event, both new faces and those who have been with us for many years. Also very grateful for those of us joining virtually. And I also want to thank you so much for your generosity. We really had an incredible turnout for the raffle, and so thank you so much. All of your participation has kept this club going for so very long, and so thank you very much. You're a great deal. Let's see. I also want to thank, I should introduce myself, that's right. My name is Killian White. I am the new executive director as of a couple months ago, and thank you. And so I want to give thanks to my predecessors, both Stephanie Young, who served for some years, and Nancy Tasinski, who kindly brought me on board and showed me the ropes. So I just want to honor both of those people because they meant a great deal to the club. I also want to acknowledge and thank our board members whose hard work is also the backbone of this club restaurant. So my board members, if you wouldn't mind standing up to get some acknowledgement. So I am new to the club, but under Nancy's leadership over the past year, the club has continued strong. We had a lovely spring get-together at the Billings Farm in Woodstock, and we're able to strengthen our connections with other community-minded organizations over the years, such as historical societies and museums. And I look forward to continuing their work in the next coming year. Now, I would like to thank our special guest, speaker, Laura Treishman, who is our State Historic Preservation Society. If we give a hand to Laura. She was appointed by Governor Shumlin in 2013 and reappointed by Governor Scott in 2017, so she's good at her job. And yeah, she has a passion. I know she had a particular project of preserving the historic markers that tell wonderful stories all throughout the state, and so I'm very much looking forward to hearing her tell us about her work. So Laura, if you wouldn't mind stepping up here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. I have to start by telling you that just this week I became a member of the 251 Club. My job takes me from one end of the state to the other in places I've never even heard of after 12 years in this job, so I thought I need to do this right. And I'm very honored to be with you here today. As we do when we meet anyone new, the conversation to learn about each other is typically, what do you do? I always answer, I'm a historic preservationist. And as you can imagine, I always get the response, oh, how wonderful, that must be so exciting, that's really great. But I'm still watching people's faces as they're digesting what I've said, because then a few minutes later I get, what is that exactly? So growing up in the North Shore of Chicago and on the Jersey Shore, I never heard the term historic preservation until my mother returned from an antiquing adventure in Virginia, where she found a college that offered a degree in it. So despite my efforts to the contrary, my fate was sealed at the age of 16, just when you want to be told what to do by your parents. And I quickly had to learn what historic preservation was actually. So I started with the classics, the places that I knew. At the end of his life, Thomas Jefferson had much debt and was unable to maintain his great architectural masterpiece. Following his death in 1826, Monticello was sold, and the new owner probably had no idea, as many of us do when we buy a house, what have I gotten myself into? So there were a lot of structural issues, there was unkept maintenance, it was deteriorating, and he actually didn't live there very often. So in 1834, Uriah Levy bought the house where he and his family would live for the next 90 years. He felt it was his mission to declare, and I quote, "Great men's houses should be preserved as monuments to their glory." The Levy family's efforts at Monticello are considered a pioneering example of modern historic preservation in our country. They undertook extensive repairs, repurchased furniture that had been sold off, repurchased portions of the property that had been sold off, and established methods of preservation still in use today. The Levys opened the house, which was their home. It was not a museum. But hundreds of people kept showing up at their door, and how could you not open up Monticello to visitors? They sold the property in 1923 to the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, which still owns and operates it today. The other example, in 1853, on a steamship traveling down the Potomac River heading to her home in South Carolina, Louisa Cunningham awoke in the night and looked out the window of the steamship, just in time to see the home of George Washington. Mount Vernon was still owned by the Washington family, but it was not occupied regularly, and it was not at all maintained. Again, what have we gotten ourselves into? But what she saw inspired her to write her daughter, and I quote, "I was painfully distressed at the ruin and desolation of the home of Washington, and the thought passed through my mind, why was it that women of his country did not try to keep it in repair if the men could not?" As her quote. "It does seem such a blot on our country," end quote. So her daughter, Anne Pamela Cunningham, was inspired by her mother's sentiments and took up the cause of purchasing and restoring Mount Vernon. She galvanized women across the nation to raise the necessary funds, established the Mount Vernon Ladies Association as the first national historic preservation organization, and pioneering women's involvement in public causes. The first member were women who responded to Cunningham's challenge and became part of the association's governing structure, with each vice regent representing a different state. The Mount Vernon Ladies Association became a model for later preservation and patriotic organizations, setting a standard for national historic preservation. At the same time as the homes of our founding fathers were being saved, in 1818, the city of Philadelphia stepped forward to stop the demolition of Independence Hall. Can you imagine vacations, exploring history without having Independence Hall with us today? The national preservation theme at the time was related to the founding of our country, the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence. By the end of the 19th century, it expanded to the creation of Yellowstone National Park in 1872 by President Ulysses S. Grant. This is some 44 years before the establishment of the National Park Service. But the theme of preserving our nation's founding continued with the preservation of Jamestown in 1889 and Williamsburg in 1923, where some of the first archaeological investigations were able to accurately reconstruct the lives of our founding fathers. but more importantly, give voice to women, children, enslaved people through artifacts like something simple as a pot, tools, jewelry, even building materials, and marked the presence of Native American tribes, the Civil War, and pre-colonial settlements. As a child of an amateur historian who never passed a museum, no matter the topic, and we had to read every word, and also the devotee of architecture and antique furniture that would crowd our house, despite the 6 children, we were living with antiques that my mother picked up everywhere. The places where I could step back in time into someone else's world to see their history where it happened, this was totally intoxicating. And I had to admit at the age of 19 that my mother was right, and she still reminds me of that today. I was gonna be a historic preservationist. Here in Vermont, historic preservation got its roots in the 19th century, also in the theme of the Revolutionary War period, founding of our brave little state, and Vermonters' contribution to keeping the Union intact. In 1848, we find some of the earliest mentions of the saving of the old Constitution House, which was probably not yet then 75 years old. But it was the remaining portion of the building where 72 delegates convened in July 1777 to adopt the Vermont Constitution. The building was moved several times in the name of preservation, and in 1914 was relocated to its current location on Main Street in Windsor, and then ornamented with the fashionable colonial revival style, which never would have been presented on it originally. And it was opened as a tea room as a way to attract visitors who could step into the place where history happened. In the early part of the 19th century, plans formed to create a monument to the Revolutionary War Battle of Bennington. But it was not until 1887 that the funding was in place to start construction of the Bennington Battle Monument. The Battle of August 16, 1777, happened in New York. We get a state holiday, so I appreciate that, and we get the Great Monument. Because it was the goal of the British to capture the storehouse that was in Bennington. Of course, we wouldn't let that happen, and thus we constructed a 306-foot stone monument to mark the location of that famous storehouse. This is the tallest man-made building in Vermont. It is the second tallest unreinforced masonry building in the United States, second to the Washington Monument. Commemorative monuments were commonly placed as a way to mark the spot where history happened, that hallowed ground where we can imagine firsthand the sacrifices of our state and country. The oldest Revolutionary War monument in the United States stands at Hubbardton Battlefield. It was placed there in 1859, some 78 years before the battlefield was preserved and open to the public for visiting. It was common after the Civil War. Several plots of land were purchased from farmers who owned the fields where the battles took place, and memorials and monuments were placed to honor the dead. This was done by individual families, organizations, and even states. The 10th Vermont Infantry Regiment was present at the Battle of Monocacy in Maryland in July 1864. A small detachment of the regiment defended the bridges at Monocacy Junction, while most of the regiment fought on the Union left flank at Thomas Farm, where they faced heavy fighting. In 1915, the state of Vermont purchased half an acre of the farm and erected a monument to the 10th Vermont at Monocacy National Battlefield Park to commemorate their service and to highlight the saving of Washington, D.C. You can imagine my surprise when I got a call from the National Park Service one day saying, "Hey, you own this in Maryland." I'm sorry, what? Next. So we have all these places being saved, but how do we tend to them? How do we determine what places to save and how? Because we can't save them all, even though I try. In 1966, President Lyndon Johnson signed the National Historic Preservation Act, which was a comprehensive federal law that established the National Historic Preservation Program and a system of procedural protections for historical resources, aiming to protect significant properties from destruction that could be caused by federal funding or licensed projects. The key provisions requires that the federal agency assess the impacts of their actions to historic properties and consult with stakeholders. It also created the National Register of Historic Places and the Federal Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. It requires the appointment by governors of state historic preservation officers to each state, territory, and the District of Columbia. And today there are 59 SHPOs. This doesn't mean that construction stops. We can't say no. We have to find our way to yes in the protection of historic resources. In 1975, the Vermont Historic Preservation Act was established, solidifying the position of SHPO and creating the Vermont Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, as the National Historic Preservation Act required. It also created the position of state archaeologist, which is today held by Dr. Jess Robinson. SHPO officers are called different things in different states. They're located in different departments and agencies, never the same in any two. Here in Vermont, the SHPO is located in the Division for Historic Preservation, which is located within the Department of Housing and Community Development in the Agency of Community Development, Commerce and Community Development. So with the purchase of what was then thought to be the site of President Chester A. Arthur's birthplace in Fairfield in 1902, the state of Vermont becomes owner of significant historic places. In 1937, land that became the Battle of Hubbardton, where the Battle of Hubbardton took place, was transferred to the state and becomes the first state historic site opened to the public. To steward these places, in 1947, the Vermont Historic Sites Commission was established. They also got oversight of the newly created Roadside Historic Site Marker Program. The commission was later renamed a Board of Historic Sites, and the Division of Historic Sites was created. And with the 1975 passing of the Vermont Historic Preservation Act, we become the Division for Historic Preservation, bringing all those activities together: historic sites, roadside marker programs, and the duties required by the state under the National Historic Preservation Act. Next, please. We are a very strong team of 15 people, and without them, I couldn't get anything done. They are my strength and my guidance. They are position experts, subject experts. They administer 21 programs for Vermonters. Many of these programs overlap, work together. Determination of eligibility must become before something gets actually nominated to the national or state registers. We work together in the stewardship of Vermont's heritage. And our goals are to be consistent, be available, and find ways to yes so that projects can happen, existing buildings can be used, and history can be celebrated. But our greatest role, the one intended by President Johnson with the National Historic Preservation Act, is to save the places that matter. But what matters? Why should we preserve things from our past? Why steward buildings and curate collections? Why save a place? Why visit a place? Who decides what that place is that should be saved? So as part of the National Historic Preservation Act, we get the National Register Program, which establishes the criteria by which all buildings, structures, sites, objects, and districts are evaluated to ensure there is consistency and that nothing is arbitrary in our decision-making. I may have a completely different opinion than the state architectural historian or state archaeologist, but when we go through these steps, we typically end in the exact same place. We start with the 50-year mark. Doesn't have to be 50 years old, but this gives us the opportunity to understand if sufficient time has passed to really understand a resource. Then we look at its significance, why it matters, what's the story? Is it state, local, national, or a combination thereof? And then integrity. Can it continue to tell that story? The 7 elements of integrity we weigh are location, setting, design, material, workmanship, feeling, and association. It doesn't have to have all of those, but it has to have a combination to be able to let Ira Allen know exactly where he is, right? Seth Warner can go to Hubbardton and know he's at Hubbardton Battlefield. Next. So a couple of the gems that we actually own at the State Historic Sites, I will share with you. We got these properties in the 70s and 80s, and when you look at them, you're like, right, why do we own these? Why are we saving these? And I can tell you, John Dunville, who was our State Historic Site section chief for many years, he and I would have this going back argument, like, why do we have this? Coinciding with the organization of Vermont's transportation system, the town of Wilmington contracted to have the Medburyville Bridge constructed in 1896, replacing an 1855 wood bridge. It remains one of only 2 double intersection worn through truss bridges in Vermont. That makes it pretty special. It's one of only 2. It was closed to traffic in 1985 when we received ownership of it. A new bridge was constructed. There's no deck on it now, but it still stands there documenting the history of this type of bridge. The Moore Blanchard Barn in Plymouth Notch was constructed in 1792 by Ephraim Moore, one of the first settlers of Plymouth Notch. This is the hometown of President Calvin Coolidge. 5 generations of Moores and Blanchards used this building, and they were related to President Coolidge on his father's side. This is one of the few remaining late 18th century timber-framed barns in Vermont, documenting the evolution of hill farming from late 18th century settlement to the mid-19th century. It was enlarged in the 1850s, 1900, 1940, 1950s, but it was a working barn, and it displays the variety of our agricultural construction methods and farming needs. And in this case, the alterations continue to expand that story. It's an essential part of this National Historic Landmark District. Forestdale Iron Blast Furnace is an early 19th century iron smelting facility located in eastern Brandon, Vermont. It was built in 1824 to replace an earlier furnace that was established in 1810 by John Smith to process iron ore. The company cast stoves, cooking pots, chains, axes, tools, small cannons, and ornamental iron that was put on chairs and statue and vases. Operations ceased in 1855, opening again only once more in 1865. This is a significant industrial archaeological resource. It is the oldest and one of the best preserved iron furnaces surviving in Vermont and New England. This place matters. One story I often tell is I was overhearing someone talk negatively about historic preservation. You could be in the back of the room and I'll hear you. And usually we regulate paint colors. We require archaeological investigations that amount to nothing. We don't allow any changes. And as I will say as a side note, we don't regulate color. That is a local decision if you want to. Places like Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, they regulate color in their oldest historic districts because it matters to them. Locally here, we're not doing it, but the Division for Historic Preservation definitely does not regulate color. And we're cautious about archaeology because digging of artifacts destroys the site, and yet finding nothing tells us something. We're mapping negative findings. And we do enable change. We find ways to yes, because an unused building is a waste. Anyway, I was able to corner this person and ask them directly why he was not a fan of historic preservation. Of course, it was windows. I should have known. He wanted to replace old windows, and the local zoning board wouldn't permit that. Not the Division for Historic Preservation. The local zoning board felt that that was a character-defining feature of those neighborhoods and wanted those buildings, the building feature preserved. Local historic preservation is the strongest element of historic preservation. This is where you, the people, get to decide what matters, what character-defining features make up your community, what you want to save. We don't come in and save. I may nudge you, but I'm not going to tell you what you should be saving. So then I asked him where he lived and why he lived there. Tell me about your hometown. He talked about his hometown of Burlington as if she were the love of his life. Light bulb over my head. He described Church Street and how it brought people together to eat and shop and visit. The University of Vermont, where he went to school, and its iconic buildings, one of which the Marquis de Lafayette visited and placed a cornerstone. How the size and design of homes created identifiable neighborhoods, each with their own history, feel, and sense of place. He said, I can't imagine living anywhere else. I knew I wasn't going to change his mind about historic preservation, the words, as a tool for managing change in his city. But what he was describing was historic preservation. Call it what you want. Economic incentives, museums, cultural places, tourism, neighborhood vitality. It's all historic preservation. We love our history. You all are a very perfect example of that. We love our places. For example, a property of the South Baptist Church in Plymouth, Small Pond Chapel, hosted evening hymn songs, which were held there every Sunday evening in July and August. But that all changed when a portion of the roof began to leak, causing a section of the ceiling to collapse. They were able to fix this, but that ever-nasty mold moved in, and sections of the walls needed to be removed and replaced. The chimney needed to be repaired, new carpeting, new painting, new HVAC. It became completely overwhelming for them. And they only used this building in July and August on Sundays. So the obvious decision was to move the hymn songs to the church on Westerly Road. A parishioner and Plymouth High School student sophomore who attended the hymn songs said that membership had dwindled since they moved and it didn't sound the same. And it became her mission to raise enough money to fix the chapel so they could return back there for their hymn sings. Another example is East Calais General Store, which was severely deteriorated. Most of the building was unoccupied, unused. And when you turn a building, turn away from it and it's not being used, it's going to deteriorate faster. You're not maintaining it. You don't have eyes on it. Buildings want to be used. But this building was the heartbeat of the community, where you do your shopping, where you get your community news and gossip, where you meet up with your friends. It closed in 2019, and the community immediately felt the disconnection. East Calais Community Trust purchased the building in June 2020 for the purpose of reopening the store, not thinking about the rest of the building. The initial estimates to restore and bring it up to code were a few $100,000. But as time passed and more building maintenance issues were identified, that cost grew. But by rethinking their plan and not giving up, because this building was the heartbeat of their community, the trust rehabilitated it to include 2 apartments, making them eligible for low-income housing tax credits, as well as rehabilitation preservation tax credits. The final cost was $2.8 million, but again, they got tax credits, 2 different types of tax credits, because this place mattered that much to them. In 2023, we received a roadside historic site marker application from a high school student who was doing a project, and she wanted to showcase the history of Devil's Bowl Speedway. My dad was a race car driver, so I was right on this. She did the research. She provided us a draft, which the Speedway historian was very excited to get and did minor editing to. For History Days, she created a full-size mock-up of the roadside marker. True to size, true to color, and the text outlining the history of the Speedway. We're super excited that the actual marker will be installed in West Haven early spring next year. Burlington's Church Street was first a developing lane named for the First Congregational Society Church built there in 1816, evolving into a major commercial center in 1850. Over the years, many of the buildings were plagued by fires that destroyed their upper stories. I challenge you, when you go to Church Street next, look up. The upper stories, stylistically, material-wise, do not match the lower stories of many of the buildings because of these fires. But the street mattered so much, they were rebuilt. In the 1970s, driven by urban renewal and concerns of suburban shopping centers, Burlingtonians, led by Bill Truex and Pat Robbins, created the Church Street Marketplace, converting the street into a pedestrian mall, which officially opened in 1981. This is said to be the gem of our Queen City, the marketplace that enables you to wander, eat, shop, visit, and look up at the buildings and appreciate them. You can touch them. I hear words like, oh, that building's an eyesore. It's dilapidated. It's underutilized. It's vacant. We have to tear it down. I don't see the same thing people are talking about when they use those words. I see our history, places that shaped our ancestors. But mostly I see opportunity, a building needing a chance to be a business, community center, or a home. Preservation is about managing the change and helping ensure a smooth continuum between past, present, and future. It's about ensuring the real needs and concerns of communities are addressed. We're advocates for the buildings, neighborhoods, and places because once a building is gone, it is lost forever. Next slide. Thank you. These are those exact same buildings described as eyesores and dilapidated, with advocates trying to demolish them. Historic preservation is a powerful downtown strategy. Rather than demolishing historic fabric, we should harness it to grow the economy and meet the needs of Vermonters. The Division for Historic Preservation doesn't stop projects from happening. Rather, we find ways to yes, asking for conversations, asking for developers and property owners to think of something in a different way they may not have noticed. To include the inherent and unmistakable character that only old buildings and landscapes can convey because they give us a sense of place. They show history. A reused building is the greenest effort we can make in Vermont. And it simply doesn't make sense to recycle our cans and newspapers to save energy and not recycle buildings. Most buildings can be repaired and rehabilitated. As the stewards of 25 state historic sites, the Division for Historic Preservation knows historic buildings bring challenges, have issues, and cost a great deal of money to maintain. But everything needs to be maintained, including replacement windows, structures covered by so-called maintenance-free aluminum siding. Even friendships and marriages require maintenance. I once saw an advertisement that read, "The new solar panels are designed to be maintenance-free, comma, requiring minimal upkeep and repair." Minimal upkeep and repair is maintenance. At the Division for Historic Preservation, we hold ourselves to the highest level of preservation with the state historic sites. We have 77 buildings and structures, 7 bridges, 7 monuments, 919 acres of land, and 11 underwater preserves open in Lake Champlain. We welcome on average 80,000 visitors annually and enjoy the support of 10 friends groups and partners. 9 of our sites are open late May to October annually with special events, programming, tours, trails, and shops. One of the more fun assignments, which I didn't know anything about when I accepted this job, was the Roadside Historic Site Marker Program, which started in 1947. It was designed as a marketing tool, with large green and gold aluminum signs placed at 75 of the most significant places in Vermont to give travelers an introduction to our rich historical heritage and to assist in planning of vacations, taking you from one end of the state to the other. The first places introduced the homes of Brigham Young, Joseph Smith, John Deere, Calvin Coolidge, the site of Fort Dummer and historic battlefields, and landmarks like the Vermont State House, Justin Morrill Homestead, Rogeby, and Rockingham Meeting House. On average, we receive about 20 applications a year, working with applicants to verify the story, find the appropriate location that doesn't hinder vehicular traffic and enables you to pull off safely so you can read them, and edit the text to 765 characters. This restriction includes the titles, all the words, letters, punctuation, and spacing. I challenge you to write your own story in 765 characters, because it's not easy. Some applications are approved in months, some take years. It depends on the topic, the existing research that we're provided, and our capacity and funding. We get $25,000 for this program annually. The 1947-49 program was so popular that it has continued for 78 years and is still going strong with 350 markers in place or in production as of today. We still use the same foundry, Siwa Studios in Marietta, Ohio, that we've been using since 1947. Siwa has shared the color descriptions with us, but not the exact font. They refer to the markers as history on a stick, which is a great way of describing it, I think. Next, please. We have visitors traveling to see all the roadside markers, taking the direction from the Vermont 251 Club and following the inspiration of Dr. Arthur Wallace Peach to not merely drive through, but veer off the beaten path to explore Vermont. There are several Vermonters who are close to having achieved the goal of viewing all the roadside markers. Of course, I keep adding more. Sometimes I take them down for repainting. Sometimes we relocate them. And we also have taken a few down, replacing or correcting history. Currently, there are markers in 151 towns, cities, and villages. And of course, our goal is 251. Most of the markers are placed along roadsides, often with the assistance of the Vermont Agency of Transportation and the many town garages. We can't do this without them. The markers weigh 175 pounds. The poles are 12 feet high. I have been to some dedications that the marker was not installed. A truck semi went by and the marker starts spinning. Right? So this is not an easy undertaking. They do not fit in Subarus. We have some at the top of ski slopes, in cemeteries and parks, and off of hiking trails. We want to make it a bit of a challenge. One of the most visited markers, actually, was placed in 2014 in Winchester, Virginia. This marker commemorates the efforts of Vermonters at the Battle of Cedar Creek during the Civil War. I regularly get pictures of this marker, so I know it's in good condition after 11 years. I can't tell you how often I get phone calls from people asking what we could do in Vermont. And I start by saying, are you members of the 251 Club? You got to go to all 251. Have you been to all the state historic sites that are open, or even found some of those that are not regularly open? And then I say, you have to do the roadside historic site markers. You would not be surprised how many people say, I've done all this, or I'm almost done, I need my next challenge. So, we have 99 covered bridges in Vermont. I can give you the list so you can start going to visit all of those. I encourage you to continue exploring our history, saving places that matter to you. I applaud the work of the 251 Club as a significant tool to embrace our history, and I thank you for being stewards of Vermont's heritage, and I thank you for inviting me here today.
I stepped away at just the wrong time. Thank you so very much, Laura, for gifting us with your wonderful perspective, which is a fantastic example of what makes this club so special, so delightful, is that we may all have different goals and different interests, and that's part of the fun, but we're all very passionate individuals, I find. I love your passion for history, and yeah, and if nothing else, I feel like we're all passionate about this beautiful, charming state that we live in, and so I'm very much looking forward to the next portion of our afternoon, which is opening the floor up to you. So, in particular, I'd love to start off this portion of the afternoon where we encourage the folks to come up and share stories of their travels, whether that's, they can share if you've managed to fulfill the ultimate goal of this club of visiting all 252 towns in the state of Vermont this year, or just adventures you've had along the way, tips that you would like to share. But so I would like to start us off with hearing from Rick Hubbard, who had a particularly impressive journey. Would you like to come up here and speak? I don't know if I want to spoil how exactly he's gone about his journeys, because it is very impressive.
Let's not overstate it. My name is Rick, and I was born in Middlebury, spent 30 years professionally in Stowe, then moved over to South Burlington to be with my 31-year life partner and sweetie. I finished my walk around Vermont during COVID. It was appropriate. You could get out and do something and still be safe because you were alone and outside. It took 20 years. I walked from and to all 251 towns. There are others who put me to shame that aren't here today, but that's a separate story. It all started because of a woman from New Hampshire by the name of Doris Haddock, AKA Granny D, who at age 88 decided that she was going to walk across the entire country to advocate for let's fix campaign financing. We all know the money is changing outcomes. It's nonpartisan, just let's make government work the way it's supposed to. And she inspired me, and I went down and joined her for a week in Kentucky. She gave a memorable speech in front of Mitch McConnell's office, but I'll skip it. And so I figured that a youngster of, I guess, about early 60s at that point, if she could do all that, the least I could do was to make a sign and wander around 3 sides of Vermont for the same thing, because if you're crazy enough to walk across the country, as she was, and that's the way her family described the beginning of her venture, and I was crazy enough to walk around Vermont on 3 sides and carry a sign about the same issue in a nonpartisan way, all of a sudden you become a little bit newsworthy. Now, we could walk into any newspaper or TV station and know something about an issue and want to voice an opinion, and nobody's going to pay any attention. But on the same facts, you don't know a damn thing more. All of a sudden, if you do something crazy enough to get some attention, you're newsworthy. And so it got me into about 50 to 60 different newspapers and places, TV and radio stations around Vermont. And at the time I began, I had never heard of the 251 Club. But I heard about it along the way, and when I finished that walk, the first part, I'd done, a part of all the towns, and I said, I'm going to go check it out. And so White River Junction was the equivalent of this gathering at the time, and I went to White River Junction and walked into the room, and I was amazed. There were at least 250 Vermonters sitting in that room. I was impressed that an organization had that much attention and attraction. So I decided, well, why don't I just peck away over the years and see if I can walk to all of them, since I've done a chunk already. And so I began to do that, and I got lost once on a Class 4 road walk between Groton and Peacham. When I was going alone, and I tried to do 10 miles a day, I would take a car and a bicycle, and I would go drive the route I was going to walk and place one or the other at the far end, and then go back to the beginning, with whatever's left, and then walk to the other end and take that type of transportation back to the beginning, and then go home or sleep overnight in the car occasionally, pay for lodging, use a friend's house when it was available. And I was in between Groton and Peacham, and that day at the end of a dirt road, I parked my bicycle at an intersection for a telephone, one of those junction boxes that was off to the side, and I locked it to it. And then I walked back to the car and then drove back to get my bike, and when I arrived, I'd lost the key to the lock. So I contacted the town clerk, and she contacted her farmer brother in town, and he knew exactly what big tool to bring to solve my problem. I mean, I didn't have a lock after that till I bought another one, but that got me going again. So there are fun adventures. I was in Shrewsbury once at the time that the Twin Towers were hit in 9/11. And I ended up going to a local church for a candlelight service. And it was really memorable. A week later, I was at a restaurant nearby for breakfast, and I started asking people in the restaurant, the waitress and some of the people, and some of the others I met along the way, what they thought about how America should respond to that. And interestingly, almost everybody said, oh, let's not over-respond. Well, guess what? I think maybe some of us had more sense than some of our elected representatives did. And then the final day, my partner, Sally, life partner of 31 years, joined me, and we were going to go and end in Norton, and we had to stay overnight. And so we stayed overnight at Jackson Lodge on Wallace Pond. And Wallace Pond is right on the Canadian line. The border runs right through the pond. And they had free canoes to use for their guests. So that night, Sally and I got in a canoe and we paddled over to Canada, legally. And the deal is that anyone on the lake, and this is agreed by both parts, can take a boat anywhere on the lake, over or around the line down the center of the lake, but you may not touch ground on the other side. So we just canoed over to the Canadian side and went along just outside the docks and said hi to all our Canadian neighbors that night. And that was kind of fun. And then the next morning, we finished up in Norton at the border. Along the way, there was one sign, there were a couple of things that stood out. And I'm going to look up something here just for a second. In Stannard, I was on a back road, and I came along, it was a dirt road or a gravel road, and I came across Black Dirt Farm. Anybody know Black Dirt Farm in Stannard? They have a very unusual way of earning a living. They have many different integrated and complementary revenue streams. Compost making, worm farming, that's where they get part of the ingredients for the compost. Raising chickens, more ingredients. Hemp growing, I suppose the empty stalks and stuff like that. And CBD extraction. Who'd have thunk? Walking around Vermont. I was blown away. And then the last thing I'll say is that outside of Brighton, I saw an especially creative sign. I'm wondering how many of you might have spotted it. And I can't show you a picture, but it says, "No more whirligigs on our green mountains." We already have enough of them in Montpelier and Washington, D.C. So we all have our good memories about the ways we did it, and mine are no more special than any of yours. I just did it a little differently. Thanks.
Anyone else like to step up and tell a tale?
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Chant, and I started walking during COVID. The walls were closing and I started walking. And I started doing 251 with my wife, but she wasn't really into it, so we sort of stopped. And then I had a couple of life events that showed me life is really short. And so on April 1st this year, I started again on my own. And I walked a mile in every town in Vermont, as well as the cities and the Gores and the Grant. And I finished on September 15th. So 5.5 months. It was a challenge. I want to just talk about one day that stands out in my memory. It was a rainy, crappy day in May. Rainy, crappy Sunday, cold. We had had a bad storm the night before. I went down to Addison County, and I'm on this back road going in and trying to access Hubbardton, and there's pylons in the road. And I'm like, oh, am I going to be able to get in? Can I get through? Can I get my mile in? Always the question, can I get my mile in? And I pull aside and I ask this woman, can I get through here? And she said, oh, sure. We just have a community group out here cleaning up the cemetery. Worst weather you could imagine. They're cleaning up the cemetery, God bless them. And they had a cemetery historian there to advise them, probably from your office, I don't know. Then I go to the next town, Orwell. Park at the town green. There's pickup trucks and cars all surrounding the town green, and they are out there on this rainy, lousy Sunday morning building a bandstand. That's Vermont. that's Vermont, people coming together to help their community. And it was so nice over the last 6 months to be reminded of all that. Thank you.
Please don't be shy. You're all here to share your stories. So, yeah, if there's anyone else, happy to hear from you. Going? Gone. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It has been such a pleasure to share this afternoon with you. Oh, we have one more thing, of course. Last but not least, we have a little raffle going on. Oh my goodness! That's right. Of course, we have 2 things for you. Okay. Well, the afternoon is not over. All right. Trivia then, Hubie. If you'd like to, please come up here.
So first of all, I'd like to congratulate most everyone for participating in trivia. Maybe it was my idle threat that if you didn't, you wouldn't get dessert or something. But anyway, I'm glad to see that you were challenged. And I'm sure that you all got all of these correct. So let's go through them. So number 1, the majority of the dam in the Connecticut River at McIndoes Falls is in what town? So feel free to shout it out. I haven't heard it yet. It's Monroe, New Hampshire. Okay. Well, so anyway, for those that don't know, the Vermont Canadian border. The Vermont Canadian border is the west side of the Connecticut River. And interestingly, that was established by a Supreme Court case in 1931. And it had to do with, money, of course, all right, about who was going to get the taxes from the power dams and so on the Connecticut River primarily. And anyway, New Hampshire won that. But anyway, what they also won was that they have to build the bridges on the Connecticut River. So anyway, the border, the western border, the western side of the Connecticut River is the Vermont-New Hampshire border. So consequently, the majority of that dam is in Monroe, New Hampshire. What? Well, the other part would be in Barnet. McIndoes Falls. So Barnet was close. McIndoes Falls is a I guess it's a census center. There's a nomenclature for an area that I don't believe that McIndoes Falls is an incorporated village, but it may be a census center. But it certainly is a place name. My roommate in college went to McIndoes Academy, which is no longer. He was in a graduating class of 5. The only Revolutionary War monument fought in a Vermont town was in what town? I was going to say we had a big clue here, and so on. So that one should, everybody should have got that one right. Anyway, so we know that was a rear guard action from the retreat from Fort Ticonderoga, and we didn't do well there. But anyway, reenactments are done there every year at the anniversary of the event, and we've been there, and it's quite spectacular. The reenactors. Pulling off that. And there's also, by the way, there's another national park, Vermont State Park. I think it's the very newest one, and it's called the Taconic Mountain Ramble. It's right adjacent to the Hubbardton battlefield, and it's a Japanese garden spot, quite an interesting spot. Going north on U.S. Highway 5, what is the first town after Leamington? I heard it, Canaan. Canaan is the next one, yeah. So, of course, Canaan is, Ethan Allen, that was where Ethan Allen Furniture's major factory was there. They were employed over 600 people up there at one point. So, Leamington, by the way, I remember I worked up through there back in the 1960s. Leamington was there was no public place in Leamington. They posted their their town list in the covered bridge that belonged to New Hampshire, okay, because they went over looking at. What is the name of the bay in Lake Champlain that's named after a trader? Arnold's Bay, yeah. That's in Panton. Benedict Arnold, you know, really quite a hero of the Revolution, but ended up in not so good terms at the end. He got a little dissatisfied. But anyway, after the Battle of Valcour Island in 1776, which many historians say that was a very, very important battle, that slowed the British down, that delayed them one more year from the Battle of Saratoga, which many historians say that was a deciding factor in the revolution. It was the factor that made the French become our allies for the Revolutionary War. But anyway, so Benedict Arnold, yeah, in the end, but he was, his very interesting story, his march through Quebec. If you get a chance to read his history, it's quite fascinating. First town south of Shelburne is Ferrisburgh. True or false? False. Very good. Okay, it's Ferrisburgh. Yeah. The town is Charlotte, not Charlotte. Okay, but it's Charlotte. Okay. What's the first town north of Pownell? Bennington. Yeah, that's relatively, yeah. Chartered in 1749 by Benning Wentworth. That was one of his first, the governor of New Hampshire. And so the town's website says Vermont's first town. There's debate about that. And we'll get to that, I think. So this one, in this library, you can stand with 1 foot in the U.S. and 1 foot in Canada without going out of the building. This is a little bit of a trick question. Name the towns. Derby, Stansted is correct. Now, if someone had said Rock Island, did anyone say Rock Island? Because anyway, the Haskell Library, if you haven't been there, very interesting. The history of the Haskell. Some people say, oh, they made a mistake. No, they didn't make a mistake. That was built intentionally on the border as a community library and so on. It has it's beautiful architecture. They still do plays. It's a great opera house as well as a library, and has some recent history. Some of it's not so great with some of our leaders, but anyway, if you haven't visited that, that's a excellent spot. Sure.
Route 5 is near the Haskell Library, right?
That's right. 103.
102. Yeah.
Had the route going by the Haskell Library. I don't know that there's a. I'm trying to think. Is it Route 5 that goes up to Derby, from Derby to Derby line? Okay. Route 5 ends in Derby line.
Leamington is not Route 5.
Did I say Route 5 for Leamington?
Yes.
Oh, my mistake. Thank you. So what is it? It's Route 104? 102. Oh, thank you. Okay. I keep thinking Route 5 is going up, right up the Connecticut River Valley, but it doesn't. Yeah. Thank you. There's also a clue here, I think earlier. The one grant in Vermont is named after this war hero. Yep, Seth Warner. Oh, I skipped one. This is a little bit of a trick question too. The town due west of Rutland. Oh no. Okay. So here, this is confusing to many people. So you say, well, I come from Rutland. Well, wait a minute. Do you come from Rutland town or do you come from Rutland city? I come from St. Albans. Do you come from St. Albans town? Do you come from St. Albans city? So depending on which Rutland you were referring to, the town due west, if you were talking about Rutland city, the town due west would be Rutland town. If you were talking about Rutland town, then the town due west would be Proctor. Okay? Excuse me. West, excuse me. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so it depends on which Rutland you were referencing, but that is confusing because you hear people, where are you from? I'm from Rutland. Well, wait a minute, really, Rutland? And if you live in Rutland City or Rutland Town, it's an important distinction, right, George? You know, so.
If you go north, you're also going to be Rutland Town.
What?
And if you go south,
Right. Berry Town, Berry City. Same kind of thing. The town of Hancock, with Seth Warner, we already hit that one, didn't we? So the story of Seth Warner's grant, is his widow applied to the state legislature and said, hey, and her husband, Seth, he died, he was only 42 years old. And she applied to the state legislature and said, hey, here I'm this destitute widow, I'm raising these children, you owe me something. So they gave her some land. And I'm never sure you may know what happened to that land. I was curious did she get revenue from it or whatever, but that's how Warner's grant came to be. The town of Hancock is in what county? Addison is correct, yeah. It's kind of where Middlebury Snow Bowl is in the town of Hancock, not Ripton, but in the town of Hancock. 82% of the town of Hancock is made up of the Green Mountain National Forest. I got ancestors that came from Hancock. The town due east of Weston is Andover. True or false? That's true. Yeah, that was chartered by Benning Wentworth in 1761, and Weston was originally the western part of Andover, thus called West Town. And then Terrible Mountain kind of splits the town of Andover. So in 1799, Weston was incorporated by the legislature as a separate municipality. So it's interesting, these town histories, how they came to be and how they got split up. Because most of the Benning Wentworth's charters were 6 by 6 miles square. He just chopped them off as he went along. So that becomes important in one of the next questions. What town is named after one of the Allens? Irisburg, correct, yeah. I don't know that, I'm not sure if Ira was named after Ira Allen or not, but I know that Irisburg was. That would be interesting to check. And of course, Ira was the brother of Ethan. Ira didn't come out too good in the end. And by the way, there's a recent book written about Ira Allen, which is, it provides a real comprehensive history of Ira Allen. The town of Wolcott is in Addison County, it's in Caledonia County. True or false? False. Yeah, your history, this is why I think one of the things about 251 is that it's not, the geography and the history, it kind of goes together. So the geography becomes important so you don't get lost in Peacham, okay? But anyway, knowing the geography is important, but the history too, I think, helps to appreciate these places more. And Wolcott, that was chartered in 1781. It's in Lamoille County. It was named after General Oliver Wolcott. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And of course, Wolcott was, I think, most recently known as the home of Buck Furniture, which is long gone. And one time it was the largest furniture building, built several buildings in the state, closed in 2014. And probably the most notable feature about Wolcott, we had a clue on that earlier on the slide, is the Fisher-covered railroad bridge there that was shown on the slide. You're on Vermont Route 12 in the town of Worcester. If you head north on Route 12, the first town you come into is Calais, Elmore, or Woodbury? Elmore, correct. Elmore's been in the news there. They've rehashed their store there has stayed alive. And that has the last operating one-room schoolhouse in Vermont. We know one of the teachers that worked there many, many years. The great state park there, we've camped there numerous times. And that was chartered one day before Wolcott in 1781 by General Oliver Wolcott, for whom the town name of Wolcott was, the name of Wolcott was called. Yeah, the town of Wolcott was named after General Wolcott. Vermont Route 100 runs nearly the length of the state, heading south to north. So fill in the missing towns within this stretch in central Vermont. So we start at Pittsfield, and then we go to Stockbridge. Then we go to Rochester, and then we go to Hancock, and then we go to Granville, and then we go to... All right, good, very good. Wait till... That's a great drive up through 100 there. The oldest existing town in Vermont is Dummerston, Westminster, or Bennington? Yeah, Westminster. So like, it depends on, anyway. It was chartered in 1735 by the province of Massachusetts. Massachusetts Bay. It was called New Taunton, or Township of Number 1. And interesting is looking into this, there weren't any permanent settlers there until 1751. The town was incorporated into the province of New Hampshire in 1752. In 1762, it became part of Cumberland County, New York. And of course, that's a whole New Hampshire, New York thing, you know, anyway, Vermont's in the middle. And then what started as a peaceful protest about land ownership here escalated, and one person was killed, referred to as the Westminster Massacre. Many were rescued, many were arrested, but they were rescued by Massachusetts and New Hampshire militias, with Ethan Allen and Green Mountain Boys coming in the following day from over the Bennington way. Anyway, Westminster, if you go to Westminster, some people there consider this the first battle of the Revolution, and they're pretty adamant about it. And I think they have a celebration of that every year. They recognize that. So anyway, it was the first town chartered by Massachusetts Bay Colony. So here, this last question is that you got to have a challenge here for some of the more. Anyway, we got a little bit of history, a little bit of geography, a little bit of navigation here. So some folks do geocaching, visiting all the towns. If you're familiar with geocaching, it's where these secret things are hidden, and you go to them by finding longitude, latitude, and so on. So anyway, or if you're a surveyor, a pilot, sailor, and you know navigation, this could help, but also geography and history will be helpful. So anyway, here's the approximate center for the town of Dorset, 43 degrees, 15 minutes, 36 seconds, north 73, I won't read the whole thing. So what town has a center of approximately 42, 58, 30, whatever? So is it Manchester, Glastonbury, or Williamstown, Mass? So you're answering like, Manchester? It's Glastonbury. So here was, if you will, here was the trick or the nuance that you needed in order to solve the problem, was that first of all, knowing the geography of the towns. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Benning Wentworth, when they chartered towns, you know, they were 6 miles square. So if you're familiar with that portion of central Vermont, that's south central Vermont, there are these towns, they just stack up there, 6 miles square, 6 miles square, 6 miles square. So that's an important part, to know that you're in the center of Dorset. So to get to the edge of Dorset, that would be 3 miles, all right? So the next part of solving the problem is to know that 1 minute of latitude, here's where the sailors, surveyors, or navigators would come in. 1 minute of latitude is equal to about 6,000 feet, okay? Round numbers, about a mile, all right? So about 1.1 miles. So if you do the math, and then you figure 6 miles per town, yada, yada, yada. 3 towns south of Dorset are in order: Manchester, Sunderland, Glastonbury. So did anybody really do the math, or did you just guess? You did the math. You put those three elements together to, okay, good, excellent, excellent. So anyway, so in the past, people have said, well, make some more true or false, make some whatever. So any suggestions that you have for future trivias, let me know, like true or false, multiple choice. You want some puppets or something? No, but anyway. So anyway, good work. Thank you.
Part you're all waiting for. A lot of you bought tickets for some of our prize packages. And we're going to do the drawing now. I think I'd like to ask our guest speaker, Laura, to do the drawing, if you could, please. A rather neutral party. Figure we could do it like that. So what we'll do is a lot of the things were packed in there really tight. So we're going to do package by package. And I'm going to dump them into here, and Laura can blind one eye, blind her eyes, and then rather than trying to dig them out of this tight thing. So the first one we're going to do is prize package number 1, which was the Berry Quarry, the Opera House, and an Airbnb stay. So get all the number 1s into there, shake them around, and then you close your eyes and just reach in there somewhere and see what you think. And maybe
Ticket number 610, Jennifer Demers.
Jennifer Demers, is she here?
D-E-M-E-R-S.
We will contact her and make sure she gets the prize. So what we're going to do is you put that back in number 1. We'll throw these away. So here comes the number 2, right? Got prize package number 2. And that is, prize package 2 is a $100 gift certificate for Nona's Restaurant and a stay at an Airbnb.
Rutland.
In Rutland, yes. Okay, so are we ready for a blind draw? Everywhere in there. Okay. Wow, what do we got?
We have Peter Swain.
Peter here?
Ticket 305.
He's here. Okay, you remember that, and we'll meet all these people that we call out. If you're here, please meet us out at the prize tables right after this, and we'll make sure you get the part you're supposed to get. In some cases, you're supposed to grab an envelope, etc. So we just want to make sure you get the right thing, okay? All right, so we'll see you in a little bit here. All right, that's package 2. Here's 3. Get all out of there. Prize package 3 was for tickets to Vin's. There's some books and games. It was called the family package. Okay, shake it, shake it, shake it. Close your eyes. Something. What we got?
Elizabeth Clayton.
We'll meet you out there in a couple minutes, okay? Prize package 4. And prize package 4 was for Montpelier Julio's Restaurant, Bar Hills Gin, something, and a t-shirt. I don't know what the Bar Hill thing was.
Oh, there's a tour.
It's a tour.
Oh, sorry, mommy.
There we go.
Ellen Sivert.
Number 4. Things are working swimmingly. All right, this is number 5. Put that in there. Everybody's out. Prize package 5 is for cheese board package. There was some cheese and a cheese board and a few other things in there. Okay? So, number 5. Close your eyes. That's the magic 1. There we go.
Glenn McRae.
Is Glenn here? Glenn McRae? And make sure that we have all this information and we'll get the package to Glenn. So that's number 5. Okay, we're at number 6. Popular. Some tickets. Out of there. 6. Prize 6 was breakfast package, gift certificate, Prohibition pig, and T-shirt. All of that kind of stuff.
Susan Kovala? Kovala?
See you out there, Susan. Make sure you get the right stuff. All right, number 7. Got all the 7s out of there. And prize package 7 was a large package of Vermont-related items from the Vermont Country Store. And there's also a gift certificate for $25 for purchasing from the store, and a copy of their catalog to do so. All right, here we go.
Siobhan Donegal? My order. Siobhan might not be here.
Okay, all right, we'll have to see that she gets that. That is number 7. Number 8. Package 8. Essex Resort and Spa, sweatshirt, brewery something, I'm not sure. Also nicknamed a Happy Lazy Barnyard package. There we go. There we go.
Chad Horvath?
Chad Horvath?
Chad here?
Chad?
Just online orders.
Online, okay, so we'll have to get Chad. All right, that was 8. We're ready for 9. It was so nice to meet you. All right, package number 9. Bundle of books. Named bookworm package. Okay.
Karen McGovern?
Karen McGovern here? Karen? Oh, it's another online run?
Let's see if I can be here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Prize package 10. These people have a 50-50 chance of getting this one. Bromley Mountain Adventure Package.
Oh.
Okay, close your eyes, feel around. Okay, what do we have?
Kathy Giortino? Giortino?
I didn't put in for that. I guess I got it anyway.
The Mountain Adventure Package.
Huh.
That's okay, I'll take it.
What did you put yours in for?
I thought I put for more smart.
Could be earlier.
Products from Morse Farm, but we've already drawn for it.
We've already done.
But if you wanted, I mean, if you wanted it, we
I'll
will
take
the
it.
Bromley.
It's okay, I've got great kids.
Okay, very good.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Oh, you're here, so I guess. It's all paper.
That's a 10. And that's 10. Here's 11. Prize package 11 is Crown Point Country Club, a round of golf, and a year's membership to Hildene. And we will have to mail that to you because it accidentally got left somewhere. There's 2 envelopes, one with each in it, and we'll mail it to whoever the winner is. So, here we go.
John Kirakis?
John? All right, very good. So now we got 2 left, 12 and 13. Here's 12. All right, out of there. Prize package 12, Jade Peak Adventure Package. And that too will have to be mailed because the envelope was with one of our board members who couldn't come today, and he has it with him, but we'll get it from him and get it to the winner. Here you go.
Phil Duran. Online, so Phil might not be here.
Phil, okay. Well, we'll have to get that to Phil. The last one, prize package 13, which is pottery and beauty products. Pottery and some beauty products.
Brenda, Rika, I've heard that so many times. I'm a board member, Brenda.
Brenda, yeah. Brenda's in here. And we thank you and meet those of you who have stuff that needs to be picked up here today, out there in the lobby where you saw the prizes.